Ladies first.
This is Joshua Sasse, and he plays Oswald Mosley in Outrageous. He's dynamic, he has fresh ideas, he is kind of the definition of a manly man, and I mean Diana was obsessed with him, and that's kind of what the story focuses on, is how her obsession with him tore the family apart. And he's an incredible public speaker, he has charisma for days, and he did have a very attractive moustache, which he's unfortunately shaved off. So
yeah, you've let me know that you don't like that quite a lot.
I really miss it.
My wife doesn't. This is Joanna Vanderham, and she plays Diana Mitford, née Mitford Mosley. Diana was the tip of the spear, I think, that everybody wanted to be, and whatever she did was en vogue. Wherever she went, whatever she dressed, she was who people were jealous of, and I think she revelled in it, and I think that came from being a sister wanting to outshine her other sisters, and I think she continued to do that her whole life until she became entrenched with Oswald Mosley, and had put all her chips on the table and never gave up until her dying day. This incredibly bold woman, unforgiving, unrelenting woman, whose beauty was matched by her brains.
Oh, I wish that was me you were talking about.
Oh, sorry. Should I talk about Diana Mitford as well?
I mean, their relationship, it's undeniable that it was a sensual and a sexual attraction. She met him when she was 21 years old, and yes, she'd already been married to someone else and had 2 kids, but she, I mean, it feels like for the first time in her life, was really attracted to someone, and it was that obsession and that passion that kind of drove her. I mean, why else would you leave a perfectly good marriage with kids? She was obsessed with him. And then once that initial kind of passion, it never went away. It never went away, but it evolved. And then there was a real meeting of minds. She was his equal. She would push him to be better, and she wanted success for him as if it was success for her. So she was almost like the Lady Macbeth to his Macbeth.
Yeah, I was about to say, yeah.
Did I steal your soundbite?
It was great. No, I mean, but it's also a very different energy to how the other sisters are played, and I think that was really important. There was a relief on camera as well, and that was something that was historically accurate, but certainly something we lent into. And the romantic scenes that are used in a very appropriate way tell that much of a story, and that was something we used as well. Well, I think the era was really outrageous, and I think the sisters were, I don't think there's another word for it, they were just extraordinary girls. Because I think they were all trying to outdo each other, because I think politics was the social currency of the day, and I think that the way to get attention and the way to be seen as avant-garde was to push the needle as far as you could go, farther than the 20s, farther than the stuffy world of the First World War and the Victorian era. They were trying to do that, wearing something different after the Roaring 20s, trying to express themselves, cut their hair, all the girls cutting their hairs in a way no one had ever done before. It wasn't just what was coming out of their mouths. It was in all avenues of their life, which Diana pushed more than anybody, well, and Unity, to be with the pinnacle of what they could be, to outdo the other.
Oh my gosh, I mean, it's...
Well, it's never been told before.
And it's also so relevant to the times that we live in now. I mean, these are women who were pushing boundaries of what was acceptable for the behaviour of women. And I feel like a lot of women can really relate to that. They relate to the idea of, I want to do everything, and I should be allowed to do everything. So there's that, but there's also the fact that they got involved in politics, and that's remarkable for the women of the time. But the show shines a light on what political extremism looks like, and I think that is incredibly poignant and a conversation that we should be having.
Well, that it creeps up on you, that normality, thinking that political leaning is normal because of your belief system, that slowly, as it evolves, one realises how it looks from the outside, but it's too late by that point, which nowadays I think is more pertinent than ever. Exactly like you said, there are 19 countries with majority right-wing parliaments in Europe alone, not to mention, you know, the axis that was the Second World War, which was Germany and Japan, Russia to an extent, Italy, those fascist states, but they weren't like North Korea, China and Russia now nuclear capable as they are now. So there's this direct correlation across the board with it. And isn't that the point of art, to reflect what's going on, to shine a light and to remind people, hold a mirror up to society, say, look, beware, remember.
But it's also, it's about the family. And so that's the hook, is you meet these girls and you fall in love with them and you relate to the dynamic that they have with each other and with the Mav and Fav. And it's through their experiences and through that lens that, you know, you're not being beaten over the head with the politics of it. It's a human story. It's about their relationships with each other, and they're using the way that it's written uses their relationships to explore politics.
And it's nice seeing how all these different girls who've come from exactly the same background have gone.
Is it nature, is it nurture? It's constantly asking that question. Fascinating.
It's approachable, I think. You know, that's what's so nice with the show is, unlike I think costume dramas that have come in the past, they are very approachable because you can't assimilate that world. Whereas this one, the girls are very approachable. It's an area of life that everyone has been that way. And it felt like that when we were filming too, because all the girls would do it. There wasn't a lot of acting going on at some times, I think.
I am not a fascist. I think that needs to be...
No, let's not.
I was acting the fascism.
But, you know, they were all the girls in this house, just playing with each other and, you know, joking. And it was lovely to see because it was... That bled onto the screen directly. And I was watching the camera. I remember I came onto set and I was watching at the monitors and they were gooning around. I said, God, aren't they great? I said, what scene is this? They said, no, they're not rolling, they're just having a chat. And that's, for me, that was the moment when I thought, oh God, I think this is going to do really, I think people are going to really get this. Because I didn't know. Maybe it just meant that I hadn't read the script.
I love that, I didn't know that story. If she doesn't win every award going for this show, I will shake my fist at someone. She was amazing, and she sourced a lot of original pieces. So I had dresses from the 30s that were like works of art, like a museum piece, and it's almost impossible not to feel like a princess. But there's also we got a note from Mary Lovell, who wrote the novel that the show is based on, and she said that the girls had impeccable posture, and that was a really specific, helpful note because it meant that you held yourself in a slightly different way than I would, and so I brought that into it, and the costumes then would sit differently and they would hang differently, and you know, the way that you kind of embodied the character. I personally didn't feel like I understood Diana or I knew who this woman was until I had my costume fitting, and that was a light bulb moment for me where I realised she is polished, she is sensual, she's put together, there's everything about her costumes, you want to touch them but you're not allowed, and I think that kind of sums up Diana. Actually,
I don't know if Claire Collins, our costume designer, will thank me for this, but normally people always ask you to get muscly, and they ask if you put on weight, and they ask you how you can do whatever. And I got a message through my agent from Claire, who I hadn't yet met. She said, look, would you mind losing some weight? Because otherwise you're not going to fit into these costumes.
But she meant muscle. I mean, he was about You were like this.
I was building up for a different role.
Massive.
And so, but it was really nice. And I said, and I understood what she was saying because the 1930s, well, she wanted me to fit into these antique suits. I mean, I'm 100 years old, and it was a different time. People were very thin, and Oswald was really thin. He was a tall, thin, very athletic man. He was a champion fencer and he was a champion boxer, and that was a really interesting process to do. And I lost 12 kilograms to get to that point. And there's always something as a character that's your hook. Often it's your shoes, sometimes it's a jacket, for a man anyway. The way that you wear something that, as Joanna said, that affects your posture. You know, if you're here like this and you're terribly hunched and you're close, it makes you feel a certain way. If it's a braced jacket and you're up here, your whole persona changes. If it's your shoe and it's tight, or it's, you know, all those things make a difference. So you often start with that in the theatre or film, and I'll want to rehearse like that. And exactly like Joanna said, when we were doing the fittings, which were long periods of time, was we put on one of Oswald's black suits, and we put on his hat. And in the fitting, all of the costume department, there was this gasp. And even for me, and I threw the hat off on the ground, and I felt very uncomfortable. Because suddenly I looked in the mirror and we'd done the moustache that day, so it was all very pointed. And we all got the creeps. Because they had done it so perfectly. His trousers with these bloomed out trousers, and there he was. And after working with the script and doing a lot of doing all of the research, to suddenly see that, I felt very uneasy on the train home that day. It was, which was so nice, because for the costume to do that is really, and it's a visual medium, so of course, but it's very important for the audience to have that. It really annoys me when I see a show and I think, that's not right. They wouldn't have this collar like that. He wouldn't wear a tie like that. That's not. And then I'm out as an audience member. I'm not invested. No, you lost me. And never, not once, with any character at any point, or haircut or anything, it was so minute, the attention to detail. And so I know that the audience are going to be drowned in that world, 100%. There's never going to be a moment, which is my pet hate for anything. If if it's a period drama or a war movie or anything, you go, oh yeah, you're on the sofa like this, and we're both watching it. Oh God, look, he's got. That's so annoying. I'm going to. Do you want some toast? I'll have some toast. I don't want that. I don't want anyone to go for a pee.
Ever
again. I want people to go, oh God, I can't. And the costume, whether you like it or not, the costume does all of that. And the same, a poster on the wall, if it's not done right, it was incredible. Everywhere we went. I mean, we were filming in true houses from the period, so there was no set. We weren't on sets. We were in houses. The paintings are real. The statues are real. Everything's real. There was no set dressing because it was there. We were in a museum, basically. And so the costumes reflected that. And I think it made all of us up our game massively because we were there. I think we have to remember that times don't change. And it's very easy to look back on the past with this lens of separation. But there's nothing different. It's happening now in exactly the same way. And that every man and woman is born equal. No one's born evil. And it can happen through those subtleties. And if you don't catch them, you don't catch the small behaviours, you're never going to be responsible for the large behaviours. And it all bleeds in and it snowballs. And I think it's happening now, as it happened then. All these these girls that grew up in a very easy, loving household. It makes no sense that they became the women that they did. It shouldn't have happened. And I think what the show's done wonderfully well is you feel like you're inside this home. You all have been inside that home. And by the end of the series, at episode 6, and it's 1936, and the girls have all made their beds in their different areas, you just kind of, how did that happen? Well, watch the season again and you'll see that's how it happened. It's awfully easy. That's terrifying in a way, isn't it?
Do you want to add something?
Yeah, I hope that audiences remember that actually it's your family, and whether that's your chosen family or your given family, that those relationships matter more than anything else. I mean, today is election day in America, and I think a lot of families are feeling pretty torn apart, and I feel like our show is going to resonate with people who maybe don't always agree with what their mum says or their dad or their sibling. So I kind of hope that people, that's what they remember from the show, is that it reminded them of themselves. Thanks.
That's such a nice thing to say.
I had longer to think about it because you were talking.
So you weren't listening to what I was saying?
Not a word.
Charlatan.